Hello, and welcome to another episode of Chase Beyond. As always, I'm here with Mark Chase, and today we're going to continue to explore CERN and kind of get a introductory understanding of it, what we know, some flags that we see, some compelling conjecture, some assumptions, and how this ties into Scripture. Mark, how you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing great, my friend. So, we're looking at an elementary understanding of CERN. For those out there, you probably don't even understand what they're doing out there. So, Mark, what is it? Can you give us like a good intro that even a guy like me can understand?
Wow. Well, let's try. And I'll be honest with you, there are people that know this far more than I do. But just in conversation, way of conversation, the place at CERN is in CERN, Switzerland, and it's right on the border of France and CERN. It's actually, looking at this, 17 miles radius. There's actually two parts to it. There is a smaller ring circle that is they call Atlas, and then the larger one, which they call Alice. And right now they're designing one called the Awake program. So within that realm, what it is, it's a large hadron collider, and what they do is they take this machine, and they've been around for a long time. We have linear colliders. We have one in between Chicago and Minneapolis. We have another one in New York, New Jersey. We have colliders all around the world that do the same thing, and what they're trying to do is just bust particles, protons, photons, to try to figure out within these protons to find out what you get when you collide them. We're talking about things that are on a subatomic level, things that we can't see, and try to bust them up and try to find out, the smallness of life, and to see what exactly is going on and what is there. And so when we look at CERN, then this is the largest machine in the world, and this machine is generates now today, 2016, 16 TeV, which is trillions of electronic volts. So we're talking 16 trillion electronic volts and so these magnets are all around these cylinders, 17 mile radius here on this track, and they are super conductors, charged with these electrodes. And what they do is they shoot this particle within the atlas, and it goes pretty fast, gets going faster, and then they hit it again, and it goes out into the cylinder, and it goes at near the speed of light. And then they take another particle and they shoot it out going in opposite directions and within the same tube, and then they have a place within that tube where they kind of connect, where they come together, where they collide these things. And what happens when you do that is you bust these particles apart, and you get, as a lot of the things that I don't understand. I'm not a physicist, but the things they say are things like gluons, quirks, stranglets, all these things that come out of colliding this that make up the subatomic particle. Now, that's pretty much what it is in a nutshell. But here's the thing that I was really interested about is when you shoot anything, it kind of reminds me of Star Trek. You remember when they were going to light speed, or whatever, and they all fell back in their chairs. Anytime you get going, you start going quicker or going faster. You have a tendency. The laws of physics said you begin to increase in mass, and so when you get to the place of near the speed of light, you become almost 14,000 times your mass. And now, so if you think of, and we're talking about particles here, and you say, well, maybe it's a pound, right? But still, when you're colliding something at the speed of light, there's a whole lot of energy that is connected with that. And and it's all, to say it is contained within the cylinder is really very impressive to me. And the question is, why? Why did they put billions of dollars? Why did all the countries come together when other countries have these colliders? Why in the world has our world, really 28 nations I think or more, have come together to put money towards this, to build this, and then it's online so that everybody can watch it. I mean, you can actually, there's a guy called it's called BP Earth, that every now and then I guess he's a scientist. He was with our government at one time, and he watches this, and he was on, and he actually knows how to read it, and so it's kind of interesting. Every now and then he'll tap into it and read this when he'll show you, what it means when these meters are up and when they're down. And he actually came out, a matter of fact, and a few years ago, and said that, which I think is interesting, that when the earthquake at Nepal hit, he said they turned it on at the same moment that the earthquake hit, which I thought that was pretty impressive. And then he showed another time when we had a filament from the sun come to the earth, and you've got these filaments on the sun, and you can see all this, on the internet, live cameras, and so at the minute they turn the CERN on, this filament detaches and comes to the earth. It's almost like this, because the magnetic, it's 100 times more powerful than the magnetic field of the earth. That's how impressive CERN is. It's 100 times more. And so, when you're talking about earthquakes and pulling things from the sun, that's 93 million miles from the earth, right? So that's a lot. So what do you do with all that? Why are they use this machine? What is it for? That's the next question.
Wow. So from what they're trying to do from that standpoint is, looks like it's just some fundamental, looking at the fundamental particles of life, technically, is what they're trying to do. But it gets a little weird from there, doesn't it?
Yeah. And they've come out really pretty much have said that they now understand the Big Bang, how it all came about, the what is it, the Higgs boson, and they understand what all that is. They said that they now know the God particle. But what's interesting when you get into this, like you say, they keep on adding things to it, and now they're saying, we want to find out other dimensions. We want to talk about things beyond just splitting the particle, breaking a particle up. And the question I have is...
So they're physically saying, we want to punch in another dimension.
Yeah, I think one of the guy from CERN, Budalici or whatever his name is, actually came out and said that we want to find out what's on the other side. We don't know what's here, and out of this door. This is a quote from him. Yeah, he says, "Out of this door might come something, or we might send something through it." And so where are they going? Through what door? And why? Right? So what is over on the other side? It's almost like, I remember, living in the country, and the cows would always get out, right? And it's always like the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, right? So let's go out there on the other side. We might find something, but then the cows get out, and then they get in the road, and nobody can go by. You end up with something more than you bargained for, and I feel like that's what we're going with all this. We're going to end up somewhere we don't want to be.
Kind of reminds me of the old Star Trek episode, where it's like to serve mankind, and they thought it was to serve, but then they were literally going to eat mankind.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's crazy that they start off just by trying to figure out these fundamental blocks, and then they say, hey, we got this thing kind of figured out. So now we're going to go completely sci-fi and we're going to try to punch into another dimension. And so they're making the assumption that there are parallel dimensions.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You know, CERN started, this whole facility began in the 50s. So they've had this for a long time. And you know, everything that we see today, they've had it going on, you know, 100 years before we know, right? I mean,
they're ahead of the game.
Yeah, we've got cell phones today, right? But they had cell phones back in the day. I mean, you see the guy in World War II, you know, with the headset on and everything. Tesla sent a message back in the early 1900s from Italy to New York and talked. And I mean, this has been going on. And you say, well, how did they do that? It's called radio waves. They've been around they're part of our domain. We live in it. We can only see in just a small part of of light, but there's microwaves and radio waves. And so, you know, cell phones, they're easy. Right? It's just a transistor, turn it on and tap into the source, and you get a voice on one side and you hear it on the other. And so when you and I think about the things of CERN, the first thing we need to understand is in 1989, 1990, right in there, that's when these guys got together in CERN and began to build something that they actually came out, I think, in 1991 called the World Wide Web. They designed it. And why did they design it? Why design? The first thing that CERN did was design the World Wide Web.
So that came out of CERN.
That came out of engineers and scientists at CERN, yes.
Because it started, I know there was a private web, so to speak, prior to, but the public version.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you know why? Because they were as scientists, they wanted to be able to talk to one another. And so here we have the World Wide Web today. And so, again, this was all, they've had this before we ever came along. They've known this stuff. So we're the stuff that we're starting to tap into and saying, hey, there's a machine over here called CERN. Well, they've been doing this for years. The question is, the reason why it's really got us going is because now all of a sudden they can only run this machine in the summertime, because in the wintertime in Switzerland everybody's using electricity, and so they have to use so much electricity. I mean, you know, 16 TeV of electromagnetic currents flowing into this thing to get these particles to run. And now we're saying, wow, what is going on? So, but the question is, they've been running this for a long time, you know.
So in all seriousness, this does have some weird implications, because if you're starting from a different standpoint, really what they're trying to do is kind of scary in some respects, because you would think that people are thinking of punching in another dimension, or colliding to replicate the Big Bang. But you know, some of the stuff, I understand this need for mankind to understand more, and I think that's a good thing. But then where, to me, it gets a little bit weird is when we start making the assumptions, the pseudoscience of, hey, there is another Mark Chase on the other side of this thing, and so we're going to plug into this guy.
Yeah, and I'm left-handed. He might be right-handed.
Maybe three-handed.
Yeah, you know, and maybe he's from Germany and I'm from America, right? I mean, it is just so out there to think that, and yet, you know, that's where we get into quantum theory and mechanics and saying, you know, you take particles on either side, and there's something that is keeping them together, and nobody knows what. They can be on the opposite part of the world and they still react together, and you think, why? Well, one of the things that's interesting about CERN is that when these particles break apart, as you know, we study this, are the gluons and the quarks and the stringlets. These are all subatomic parts of the particle. When they're breaking apart, they are like the fabric. And one of the things that they know with the stringlets, and they don't like to talk about it, are that they actually disappear. they're there, and they actually leave CERN. They leave the cylinder when they have this explosion. They have the ability to leave they go right through the machine. And we have subatomic particles going in and out of us all the time, just like I said, microwaves and light waves of different things, coming in and out. I mean, that's a whole nother story. But what are these stranglers then? What is their nature? And how are you going to punch a hole through? One guy said that the interesting thing about these stranglets is they can end up in the center of the world, of the earth, after they smash. I mean, where do they go to? I mean, nobody knows. And so now you're talking about things that are entering in a whole another dimension. Now, my belief, and I understand where you get in with the multiverses and different, dimensions, and thinking that one of the things that they're talking about now is that whenever things happen, compression, we're kind of pressing up against another universe, and they're saying they're starting to see some of this in the Antarctic. I don't know about all that, but these stranglets, if they're able to punch through, and because they become a different material or nature that we understand in our own physical, are they now able to punch through? Have they now found the way in which to do that? And why? And what is on the other side? And if I was to think that there was another world beyond ours, that would be interesting. Okay, the question is, well, let's back up just a little bit. A particle can only run up to the speed of light. After the speed of light, it has to slow down. Okay, and that's when you start bending time. Okay, that's when time begins to bend. We call those WIMPs today. Those are particles, weak particles that deaccelerate, and that's where they said the Big Bang actually happened. But now, when you get into this process, then, where the world, and that there's another a universe outside of ours in another domain, and now you're going at the speed of light to punch through this thing close to it. When you slow down, then you open up a gate or a door and you enter into another time, or you bend time. Where are you actually bending that time to? See, my belief is, I don't think there is another universe, okay, because that's all theoretical. But I do believe there's other domains. I believe that we live on, up and down, back and forth, height, width, volume, on the four dimensions of this earth that you and I live on. And I believe there's other dimensions. I believe when you look at, when the Bible, for instance, talks about in chapter 5 that around the throne there's these different colored rocks, right? I think you're just looking at a different dimension. So if they're trying to punch through another dimension, that makes more sense to me, because by punching in another dimension, like these stranglets going into another dimension, then you opening up a door to find out maybe what another dimension can do, and maybe we can, understand that dimension. I think that's pretty impressive. I would love to see that. I mean, some people say there's 12, 13, 14 dimensions, right? And so that would be interesting to be able to understand other dimensions. But when you start to think that there are other domains as well, and I'm not talking about a whole other universe, but we do know, people that believe in, that are religious, you don't even have to be a Christian, you believe there's heaven and there's a hell. Well, that's another dimension. I'm not walking in, and that's a whole other domain. I'm not walking in hell. Some people think they are, and I'm not walking in heaven. I'm here on earth. So when you think about those dimensions, or those domains, there are other domains. but are they actually universes? So when I look at what's written, when I look at all the things that have the Golden Age, the things people talk about in the past, yeah, they talk about that Mars and Saturn used to be configured different to the Earth. They talk about how they're, when we get to talk about Planet X and all these things, yeah, things worked a little bit different back in the day. Or so where are we today? Is there really multiverses, or to me, are you tapping into another dimension or another domain outside ours? Now, to me, that's the question. Because if I'm wanting to tap into another domain, what if I tap into hell? What if I actually tap into hell? Do you want Hitler back? I mean, do you want Mussolini back? Do you want the devil and all these bad things? Do you want those things back? You say, well, we might punch into heaven. Well, would God let that happen? If there is God, that means there's going to be a heaven. It might be the other way around, and that's what scares me.
What I'm astounded by this thing is to think that anyone listening here needs to understand that when we're talking about punching holes in dimensions and sending something through to another place or bringing it back, this is their work. You got to understand, you got to really let that soak in, that this is what their plans are. This is not religious talk. This is not speculative. This is their words, their time, their place. This Sergio Bartolucci, when he quotes this is a director out there. So it's really interesting. So when we take that and then we look at these dimensions and say, well, maybe you punch into hell or maybe you punch into heaven, part of what we do is we're looking at some of these flags that appear to be causing us some areas of concern. Like, for example, they produced a video, and the video was, I believe, called Symmetry, wasn't it?
Symmetry, yes.
And what is that about? You mind telling us?
Well, they do this dance, and of course, they've got the Shiva out there in front of CERN. It's a statue. It's a Hindu god, a god of destruction, which that's what they are saying, is that they're destroying these particles. They're about, colliding, so, you have the Shiva. But Shiva is doing a dance, and she's in this circle, which is a picture of a portal, going through a portal or a door. Okay, and so Shiva is doing this dance, and by doing this dance, you go through this portal. Okay, and you have to, only way to go through that portal is through destroying something. Now that's scary. So the symmetry is all about the fact that this dance that CERN is actually, they put on themselves. They're the ones that came up with it and, videoed it and put it out there for everyone to see. And you have a group of people in the CERN building doing a dance, and they're all doing the same dance together. And then they jump to this person that's in the circle, and I guess he's dressed in black, and no, he's dressed in white, I think. Is that right?
The one in the middle of the circle is dressed in black.
He's dressed in black in the beginning. Okay.
And he's kind of seducing the people, rubbing their faces, and you're seeing this hint of something there, right?
Yeah, and then they show another picture where it's a whole bunch of people that are naked. So, you don't see it, but you know that they are, and they're all kind of entangled, like entanglements, like quantum entanglements. And they're all tangled together. They're all bunched together, like they're moving through this portal, okay? And then it jumps to the scene again where the guy's in the middle of the circle, and he's, like you say, he's seducing, he's bringing you through. And then you find the guy on the outside of the circle, and he comes into the picture, and he comes right up to the edge of the circle, and he can't get in. He's standing there, and so they're continually doing the symmetry. They're doing this dance, and the guy in the middle does this dance. And he becomes entangled along with the, like the people coming through the portal. He becomes entangled with the guy on the edge of the circle, and they begin to do a dance together, and then pretty soon they flip-flopped. And the guy that's on the outside is now on the inside. A doorway has now been opened.
So the guy in the black is on the outside, the guy on the white's on the inside.
Yeah, and they've come through. So symmetry has happened. In other words, they have linked up with the doorway to the other side. They, it's like having it's like anything, you know. My wife, she just changed the, when she opens up her phone, you know, she just changed her number on her phone to be able to open it up. And I was so upset the other day. I was like, how do you open your phone? I need to borrow your phone. And so she's like, well, I changed the number. So you've got to, so when she gave me that number, we now have symmetry. You see, she unlocked it. She has the key. And that's what this whole thing is at CERN, is trying to unlock the door to bust through. There's got to be this perfect symmetry. Now, along with CERN, not only do you have this goddess Shiva, but you also have the understanding of the intertwine, or the particles actually have to be able to hit. When we're talking about something smaller than a pinhead that these things have to collide on, how do you get the symmetry to where they are actually being able to collide together at that perfect place? And so they understand that when you start spinning it, not only is it being shot through, but when you shoot through these particles, they begin to spin like rifling on a gun. And when they start spinning, they take up
kind of a corkscrew?
Like a corkscrew, and this corkscrew, they begin to look like a hexagon. And so that's what they look like. And they're trying to get them to get smaller and smaller and smaller until they get to this place where they hit symmetry, where they're both corkscrewing at the same motion. They're all, the one going, this one that's positive and one that's negative, are both going through this cylinder, corkscrewing at the same type of motion. And that's symmetry. And when they can get it to do that, then they collide.
So as believers, though, you know, one of the flags that I think a lot of people look at is they watch this video and we see a portal. We see this dancing going on. Then it looks like you see some people who are being seduced by a man in black. You see a portal, and you guys have to watch this video in full. We're going to superimpose some stuff, but you really need to watch this video created by them. And then, after this all goes on, there's this man in black who comes through the portal. And so, from a Christian perspective, there's a lot of symbology there. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I think there's more symbolic overtures that we realize. I mean, I think there are things being said and suggested that why is one guy in white, one guy in black? Why do they want to punch through a portal? They just to find out what's on the other side, without any regards for the rest of us. Why? We say, well, that surely they know what's going on. Well, I believe they do know what's going on, and I think there's a bigger picture here. Personally, I do. Now, if you're not a believer, if you're an atheist or whatever, you look at this as pure science, right? But what is science? Science is simply built on a bunch of theories that have been proven. Fact. Well, there's nothing proven. Matter of fact, when they came out and actually said we found the God particle, they said, well, we're 85% sure we found the God particle. They never said they 100% fact, we have now found the God particle. they're 85% sure they found it. And so, but because the media comes out with the hype, everybody's, well, they found the God particle. One guy says, we don't need religion anymore. We found out how it happens.
Well, there you go.
And 85% sure we know what's going on. Well, who gave you the percentage of 85%?
Yeah.
I mean, who comes up with this stuff?
But there's an arrogance to that because we're assuming that we are so intelligent that we can gauge that at 80, just like with when you were talking earlier about these other dimensions and multiverses. There's a lot of conjecture out there, and strong conjecture, that the reason that they're even suggesting that to begin with is because the premise of evolution requires so much time for it to happen that you could have a billion, trillion, gazillion years and it still doesn't have enough time to evolve to where we are. So then you put infinite number of universes, an infinite number of this, an infinite number of that, and then they say, well, within one of them, we can get life in what we expect today. But all that's built on, dare I say, a religion?
Yeah, and is it not? I mean, to believe in something that's 85% sure, you have to have 15% faith. And so isn't that faith in that religion?
And we don't have no physical evidence. I mean, the stuff of multiverses and multi-dimensions is outside the realm of the scientific process.
Yeah, and it's all it's all theory based, and I mean it's all speculation. It's great, science fiction, and I mean it sells. And people love to hear it, and we want to think that we're moving on and we're smarter than we are. We want to think that we can become God one day and not have to die. Why believe in religion? I was reading a quote from Bruce Willis, the actor. He said I don't believe in religion. We don't need it anymore. He said we have it all figured out. And I look at
thanks, Bruce, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And when I look at religion, though, I think about the Muslims with the Quran, the Buddhists, the Hindus, Taoism, all these different isms, and none of their books, though, explain anything that's going on today. But when I go into the Christian Bible, I am amazed at how much it speaks of all this stuff. And even the extra biblical texts that the Bible actually is, like the book of Enoch and others that quotes from, speak of a lot of these things that are happening today. For instance, I'll give you a for instance. When the Bible says on the second day that God is going to take the expanse and divide up the firmament that is below and the firmament that is above, the word firmament means firm. It is to stamp it out. Now we think it's the waters from beneath and the waters from above, but water, there's a firmness to it. And within water you have life, and within water is a great conductor of electricity. And so what I believe God did was on day one, by the way, he said on day one he made light. He said, let there be light. Light is a constant. So supposedly is a constant, and that constant is how we measure time. So day one, God created time for us in our domain. Day two, he separated the firmament. In other words, he made a grid. He made a stamped out grid throughout the universe. Okay? Now, CERN is saying we're going to punch through that grid. I mean, really, that's what he separated it from the above and separated below. And that's what we call outer space, right? And so what CERN says is there is a grid out there, and they're running the whole thing of what CERN is, this 17-mile track, is simply a man-made grid, okay? And this man-made grid, then they're going to come to this other, they're making this thing now called awake. And once it's kind of suggested that it's like a guy with a rifle with CERN, what they have now, they're going to shoot these particles, like shooting it into a rifle. And then with the Awake program, it's going to be shot into like a cannon. And they're that close to punching through this grid. And so they want to get to the other side of the firmament. If God said, I separated the firmament, and by the way, here's what's interesting about day 2. Day 1, after he made it, and it is good. Day 2, he does not say that. Day 3, which is Tuesday, by the way, because first day of the week is Sunday. Okay, Saturday is the Sabbath. So day 1, Sunday. Day 2, Monday. Day 2, Monday wasn't a good day. That's why we have bad days on Monday. Day 3, Tuesday, God makes up for Monday, and he says it is good twice. So it's interesting that on day 2, why didn't God say it is good? And I've listened to guys, all this conjecture all the time, telling, well, we don't really know the mysteries of God. Yes, we do. It's very plain. Because in Ephesians chapter 4, it says, do not give the devil opportunity. And the Bible says that Satan is he's the prince and the power of the
air.
And so he's the prince and power of the air. That's where he gets opportunity. And God divided up the firmament from below and that from above, which gave Satan his opportunity. And so God didn't want to say it is good. Why? Because by separating the firmament above and below, what did he do? He caused a schism or a rift between earth and heaven. And isn't it amazing that when we get into Genesis chapter 10, Nimrod wants to build this tower to do what? To get to heaven. And now CERN wants to break through to get where?
Wow.
Kind of interesting, isn't it?
It is. And then Scripture tends to allude that at the end times, it'll be like it was then, today.
Right, days of Noah. And people forget, when they think, oh, that was all about the flood. Well, Noah lived about 200-300 years after the flood, during the time of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. Noah was still alive.
Wow. Well, guys, we're coming up against the end of the show here today. One thing we're going to dive into is get a little bit further down this rabbit hole, but then we're also going to figure out how this does tie in with Nimrod, and are there any ties with Nimrod, and why he built things such as on a plain and not a mountain, to try to punch through heaven. So stay tuned with us for the next episode. Thank you for listening today, and have a great week.